I'm here to talk about something that's dear to my heart, which is politics, elections, democracy, all linked together. In 2014, out of a sense of frustration with the development of Nigeria and the state of our lives, I decided to contest the PDP primaries for the ticket to represent Amak Buhari in the FCT, in the National Assembly, the House of Representatives specifically. And what I learned through that process was such an eye-opener about how the political economy of Nigeria works that I thought I had to share it with everyone who can read English. So for now, the book is only in English. It's called Love Doesn't Win Elections, and it captures what it takes, or what it took me anyway, because I'm quite sure that politics is different in different locations. But I'm also pretty sure from my experience and the stories I've heard about other people that a lot of the experiences I had are shared by many other people who have tried unsuccessfully and successfully to contest elections in Nigeria. So I learned many valuable lessons, which I want to talk about today and bring it home to where we are today, preparing for yet another election in 2019 in a few months. Now, the first lesson I learned that was really important was that by the day of elections, 80 to 90% of the battle for decent leadership has already been lost. Why do I say so? Because at the general elections, we're only then voting for the people that the parties have presented to us. And if you're not a party member, if you're not a delegate, you have no say in the process. So during the general elections, we already started losing the main battle for decent leadership. And what's decent leadership? Leadership that will be accountable to us. Leadership that will come in with a vision and a mindset to sacrifice. Leadership that will make Nigeria a better country, where we can stop talking about things like, short electricity supply, bad roads, just the basics. Right now, Nigeria is at the bottom of almost every human development index, whether it's from health to education, to maternal mortality, infant mortality, children out of school, almost everything, we're at the bottom. And so for me, we need to start thinking very seriously about what takes place before the elections. We cannot focus just on the elections alone. So that's the very first lesson, that our parties are flawed, they're not democratic, and the process within the parties is designed to always give us a particular result. So for example, one of the things that I experienced, even just trying to join a party, was running around Abuja, trying to find out where my ward was. And you'd like to think that in the 21st century, this information is everywhere. It should be on the website, as it is in more civilized countries. So for example, if you go to the Labour page for the Labour page, UK party, the Labour Party, you'll find that you can check through like a search engine based on your address, where you live, where your ward chairman is, where your ward officials are. You can even get an email or a number. All that's from the comfort of your home. And when you're a registered member of the party, they communicate with you, they send you information. All of that doesn't happen in Nigeria. Trying to find your word is like trying to find a needle in the haystack. You're literally running around asking people. And you're wondering, why should it be so hard? That's a clue. It's hard because the political players don't want you. And that's the second lesson. The politics is an industry. That the same way you have the NBA, ICANN, all these professional bodies that have licenses and requirements to join them, the political industry also have their own requirements. And I think typically the requirements are that you shouldn't think for yourself, you shouldn't be financially independent, you should be at the bottom of the financial or the social pyramid, and then you're an excellent candidate. So they don't want people like me and you walking in. There are many people who have said their experience range from people asking them who sent you when they want to register, when they want to join a party. And you have to ask yourself, why would a party in Nigeria ask another person who sent them? Why shouldn't they want members to join? And the reason why you should be suspicious, because if parties wanted members, then they would actively recruit them. They would make it easy to be found. They would share information freely and openly. And for me, the link again between party membership and the independence of the parties is tied to the fact that if you had many members who are financially independent, who are middle class to working class, who can pay minimum dues every month, every week, every year, then your party will be able to finance at least some of its activities. And you have parties who don't have to be beholden to the godfathers and godmothers who fund the parties, which is the model we have right now. So we should be thinking to ourselves, why do we have political parties that don't want independent financing, that want to be beholden to a few people within the party for finances every time they want to have any activities? with 180 million Nigerians, even if you half that number, it still comes to 90 million Nigerians. If 90 million Nigerians give 100 naira, that's a lot of money. Any party should be able to use that money wisely. So that's the second lesson. That is the political industry doesn't want outsiders. It has stakeholders that are generation long. So you can find an old man who's been in the party structures, maybe being a party chairman. Then he has a middle-aged son who's working for government as an essay to one of the ministers or the governors. Then you have a younger son who's being groomed, who's managing delegates. So it's a procession line. It becomes the family business. And that's why outsiders have a very hard time penetrating this system and making a go of it successfully. The third lesson I learned is that money is extremely important. Now, we talk about the impact of money in elections a lot in Nigeria. But the stories that we hear are usually the very negative stories. And I'm not going to discount those stories. They're valid. But the truth is, until I ran for office, I didn't realize that, there are many legitimate costs to running for office that you can't run away from. So money is important, and you must have money to run. So there's no running away from that. So if money is important, how do you raise it? Now, that's the good news. The good news is that the people in your circle of influence, the people that you know, your constituency, so to speak, your first constituency, so to speak, your friends, family, colleagues, they're the ones who will fund your election, at least to start, until you get into the public eye. And why would they do this? They'll only do this if they know and think you're a viable candidate. They'll only do this if they think you have values that mirror theirs. So money is important, but you must have a brand, and that's the fourth lesson. How do you raise money? You can only raise money if you have a brand. So we can use the current president as an example. He had a brand. He could raise money during the 2015 elections. People were donating to his campaign, small amounts, big amounts. That's the value of having a brand. It helps you raise money for your elections. The truth is, Nigeria needs to move away from the model where when you want to run, you have to go and find a rich or wealthy patron, godfather, who funds your election, but obviously wants returns on their investment, which now puts you in a position where you're clashing with them constantly, and you're unable to fulfill what your obligations to your constituency, whether it's on the state level or federal level. So for me, that's another very important thing. The political economy is dysfunctional and it's designed to exploit. And to really understand that, we must look at the structure of Nigerian government in its totality. So for example, many people argue and put forward the theory that the structures that we operate right now in Nigeria, whether it's the civil service, whether it's how our governance is structured, legislature, executive, a national assembly, and a president, a very powerful president, is designed to exploit a system that's from pre-1960 independence was set up for the British to extract from the country. So you have a civil service that gives itself all sorts of perks, all sorts of rewards. So you look at your budget and you find that your budget priority is all skewed. The bulk of your budget is going to support those in government to make their lives cushy, to give them all these benefits, houses, cars, trips abroad, training, all to the detriment of Nigeria. And so you have that system, and then layered on top of it is the political system, the electoral system that's designed to keep perpetuating that, so that you can't shake free of this system with our current political structures. So that's another thing to look at. The other flip side of the political economy, apart from the fact that you have to have a lot of money to invest in it so that you can reap your rewards, the other benefits, element of it is that while it's suspicious of outsiders, which I would say I was an outsider running, the political economy is reliant on making you think you can win. So they'll do all sorts of things to frustrate you in the beginning, the lack of information and all that. But at the end of the day, they need you to help spread the money around. So they'll make you think you can win. They'll sell forms to you. That's a way of the party getting money. You have to meet with the delegates. You have to give the delegates money. All that oils the machine. And so it's a flip side. They don't want outsiders, but if you're a stubborn outsider who's determined to run, they will exploit you, make you think you can win, take everything you have, and then go. And again, it's still this system is tied to knowing that you shouldn't spend your own money on elections. Nobody reasonably does. If you're going there to do good, it's hard to take your own hard-earned money and spend it on election. What you should do is try and cushion. You'll spend your own money, but you have to cushion that by raising money from other people. And the last lesson is about the power of information. Now in Nigeria, like everything, we use information as a weapon, as something to keep people out, as something to distract people, as something to make people not understand what the obstacles and challenges are. And I found that very fascinating. I've alluded to one earlier when I talked about the fact that finding your word should not be like trying to find, a needle in a haystack. Why shouldn't this information be online in the 21st century? We're having big financial transactions. People are voting. 30 million votes are being recorded and assessed for Big Brother, for example. All that is happening using technology. And yet in that age, we find that no, the membership list for a party is still a hard book with lines in it, or you're looking for your word and you have to go word mouth by mouth asking, instead of all this information to be out there. There's other information that's hidden from you as a prospective politician. It's tied to the process. Your party will have its own rules in terms of how much your forms cost. There's also, your party will have its own rules in terms of how you process your nomination and your expression of interest. There are different documents that they expect from you. Many people don't know all this, whether it's your tax returns, how far back your tax returns have to be. The fact that even though the Constitution says the minimum requirement to be an elected official is school cert, you would presume that if you have a university degree, that should suffice. But depending on which party you belong to, they could insist that no, all they want to see is your primary school leaving certificate. So if you want to run or you have any plans of running, you don't have that certificate, go find it now, because that will be an opportunity for the people in your party office to gouge you, to make you run around and run through hoops trying to provide that document which you don't have, and which in a reasonable society you would say, surely I wouldn't have gone to university if I hadn't successfully finished primary school and secondary school. So that's another element that I learned, that information is used as a weapon to keep people out, as the industry wants to. And that's one of the reasons why I also wrote the book, because I thought by putting it all out there, I've democratized the information, and everybody who can pick it up can read everything and know everything that I know. Now, bringing all this that we know now back to today, to a few months, or I guess less than a year to the general elections, what should Nigerians be doing? What should we be feeling about our parties and the chances of getting better leadership through the electoral process? How are we feeling about some of the revelations that we're hearing about how compromised our electoral system is? We had, towards the end of March, former Deputy Senate President Ibrahim Mantu on national TV, on channels, and in an interview admitting that yes, they used to rig elections. And we can be pretty sure that they still rig elections. It's just that as time goes on, since 2011, since the introduction of the card reader, we're seeing a sense, we're trying to get more confidence in the system. But the truth is, the Electoral Amendment Act hasn't been passed yet. And because our laws don't specifically mention the electronic card reader, in the last elections, many of the courts, many of the judges threw out the evidence that came from the card readers, which is not a good thing for democracy. So there's supposed to be things that we're doing right now in the build-up to the election to secure our electoral process and to make it harder for those who always want to rig. But we're not even doing those things right now. So what should an average citizen do? After watching this video or listening to me, the idea is not for you to feel helpless and to walk away saying there's no point. No, the point is that we have opportunities to do things differently. One of them is that, yes, do get your PVC. That has been a rallying call, and it's very exciting to see that many people, you hear stories, you read stories in Daily Trust and other papers saying how people are spending the night in lines trying to get their PVCs, trying to get registered. That's fantastic. But beyond that, when we now have our PVCs, don't forget the first thing I said. Voting on election day, we've already lost more than half of the battle for decent leadership. So what can we do? Well, one thing we can do is try and assess the candidates very strictly. To do that, first of all, we have to know what we want. What do we want? What kind of president do we want in Nigeria today for the issues that we face today in the 21st century? What kind of legislators do we want? Knowing what we know about the process, what type of legislators do we want? That's one. The other thing that we need to be thinking about is even our governors, state assembly legislators, what qualities do we want from them? Honesty, empathy. What are the kind of things that we need from them? When you have that list, then you can assess your candidates based on your values, based on the things you think these people should have. So basically what I'm saying is we need to be less emotional about making our choices. I'm as guilty as everybody else, of making what I call votes against. So you say one candidate is just so horrible, oh no, I can't vote for him, so I'll vote for the next person. It doesn't really work that way. because we find ourselves being pushed between the two major parties over and over again, and both of them have gotten quite complacent. People would argue and say, oh, the current ruling party in federal government hasn't been there long enough. But the truth is the amalgamation of all the people who have been in government since 1999, or who have been trying to get into government since 1999. So they're still the same people. So we should be saying to ourselves, what else can we do? We don't have anything to lose. We can try something new. There are 68 parties in Nigeria. It's likely that INEC says that we'll have even more than that before the election. Is that good? Is that bad? I have my views, but the truth is, it is what it is. So why don't we take a chance on these parties who might not have proven themselves, but are at least trying to be in the game, being consistent about trying to find the kind of quality candidates we need. So there's this thing that we say to ourselves, don't waste your vote. No, waste it, if that's what you want to call it. Waste your vote. We need to show both major parties that we're serious about wanting serious reform. Serious reform doesn't mean changing the faces of the people who are in government, changing your aides. Serious reform means constitutional amendments that reduce our government. Our government is too large and it's too expensive. Serious amendment means maybe even shrinking our National Assembly and questioning whether we need a Senate. Fundamental things that will free up money so that instead of spending 70+ of our budget on recurrent expenditure and servicing debts, which we're going more and more into debt daily, we're borrowing more and more money for the future generations to pay off. So a lot of the revenue we get, we hardly have enough for capital expenditure. How can we flip this? So those are the kind of reforms we want. And if we're too scared to vote for the candidates who haven't shown us what they can do, but maybe have track records in the private sector or civil society, private life, we should take a chance on them. So for me, that's where I'm going towards 2019. The second part of getting ready for 2019 that's tied to what I know and what has happened in the past is that elections are won by people. So yes, the title of my book says Love Doesn't Win Election, but what wins elections? People do. People can win elections. So another thing we should be doing is looking closely at our numbers. What does our voters register tell us? What does the history of voter, what's the word I'm looking for? Not voter apathy. What does the history of voter turnout tell us? So we know, for example, that since 1999, less than half of the registered voters come out to vote for the presidential election. And presidential election is usually the highest. By the time you have presidential elections, the other ones are sort of, people lose interest. The main one that people seem to focus so much energy on is presidential. So if you look at the numbers from presidential elections since 1999, you'll find that less than half. So where are those other people? What's keeping them away from the ballot? How can we get them? What's the reason why they don't vote? For me, those are the hard works that all of us need to do, all of us citizens. So it's not enough to have your PVC. Of course, encourage everybody that you know to have their PVC as well. But beyond the PVC, there's other steps. Assess your candidates carefully. Beyond that, how do we make sure everybody comes out to vote? As many people as possible that come out to vote. The big parties relying on our usual framing of elections where we say we don't want to waste our votes, or the smaller parties don't have structures. This is the secret. What does structures mean? Structures just means people. So instead of using the model of the older parties, the older generation parties, which is pretty much paying people to be loyal, that's all it is. Can we not find enough people, enough of us? We're such a large country with a large population that we're so proud of. We talk about our population as it's something special. It's a huge market. We can do things. We need to take these numbers and put them into the electoral process as well. So how can we get more people who can be bought, to build the structures for the parties that they want, to build the structures for the candidates they want? So you might not be partial to the party, but are you partial to the candidate? How do you help recruit people who can't be bought on election day? Who, when they're standing around with the agents of the other parties and they say, let's take these ballot papers and share them amongst ourselves, they'll say no and be the voice of reason and be the one to report it, even if at risk to their lives. But that's where we are right now in Nigeria, trying to struggle for better representation and more legitimate people coming through the process. The problem with rigged elections is that the people who get in know what they did to get in. At their heart, at the core, they crave legitimacy. But the truth is they know what they did to get into office. And so somehow, in the way they act, in their attitude, they know our votes didn't count, so to speak. That's the problem with rigged elections. And so we should all be working to do more, to do better. So for me, those are the opportunities that we have for 2019. I'll repeat them again. Do get your PVC, do plan to vote, but assess your candidates carefully and care about the whole electoral process. And then don't let it stop there. Let's start preparing for even 2023 and 2027. Elections shouldn't just be a 4-year event. We should learn to be more political in the sense that we should be joining the parties as well, building the parties from within, molding the parties to reflect our values, funding the parties so that godfathers and rich men and women can't hijack these parties and use them for their own interests. Those are all the opportunities that we have in Nigeria. And so for me, if I was asked what would make a brighter Nigeria, what would make the future bright for Nigeria, it would be for more of us to pay attention to the electoral process, to governance, and to take active parts, which is a little bit beyond just voting during elections.